Hey YouTube, Tom here from Cased in Glory Football Cards. I'm coming at you guys on a Sunday night. Kind of just been taking it easy all day. I've been watching a lot of the NFL Network after the draft. They're always doing the top 10 countdown videos, so I've watched plenty of those. And it just got me thinking, I think I'm going to do my own little countdown video in terms of cards and, more or less just for fun. But I want to do a countdown of the top 10 greatest running backs of all time. Now, the only really criteria for this list was you had to be retired. So obviously, Adrian Peterson, who I consider one day is going to be in the top 10 discussion of the greatest running backs to ever play, he's not going to be on this list. And I made a conscious effort not to include one particular running back named OJ the Juice, who I think you could argue in the top 10, but for reasons that I don't really need to specify, I'm not going to have him on this list. But everybody else who has played in the NFL and is now retired is fair game for my top 10. So I pulled 10 cards, all of these of running backs, and I'm going to do my own little kind of countdown here of the top 10 who I think in order based on what they brought to the game, whether it was rushing, receiving, being a dual threat, blocking, just overall the top 10 best running backs that I think ever played. So without further ado, starting with number 10, I would go with Heisman Trophy winner, Houston Oilers running back at the University of Texas, Earl Campbell, who played throughout the 80s and was just absolutely dominant since his first year in the league. I think he was his rookie year, I think he was league MVP, and he also went on to lead the league in rushing 3 straight years in a row, and is the only other running back in NFL history to rush for. Actually, he's the only running back in NFL history who has a 1,900-yard rushing season. There were 7 guys who have 2,000. Earl Campbell is the only 1,900-yard rusher, and then there's a few guys who hit the 1,800 mark. So Earl Campbell would definitely be number 10. I mean, when he was playing in the 80s, he was the standard at which all running backs were measured. Number 9. Unfortunate that this guy's career was cut short, but when I was watching him play in the 90s, there was nobody better in all the league. This guy had absolutely no weakness, and that is two-time Super Bowl champion Terrell Davis of the Denver Broncos. And I mean, he only had 4 years, similar to Gale Sayers, 4 full seasons. In those 4 full seasons, the guy won 2 Super Bowls. He was a Super Bowl MVP. He was a league MVP. He had 2,000 yards rushing, one of 7 backs to ever do that. He was unstoppable, and it was a shame to see his career get cut short. But I think if this guy actually played a full career like many others, he would definitely be in the conversation of maybe the greatest, or at least in the top 5, would be Terrell Davis. Another guy who I got to see play a lot throughout the 90s and 2000s, another guy who was a league MVP, Super Bowl champion, and that is St. Louis Rams running back Marshall Faulk, part of that greatest show on turf offense. Faulk, if you look at his numbers, both rushing and receiving, was one of the greatest offensive weapons of all time. And I mean, he was a guy too, elusive in the open field, could block, could catch, could do everything you could possibly ask. And I have Marshall Faulk at number 8. That might even be too low for him if you look up what he was able to achieve throughout his career. Moving on to number 7, the Kansas Comet, Chicago Bears running back Gale Sayers. This guy was another guy who could do anything you asked him, whether it was returning kicks, returning punts, catching the football, making the long run, making the short run. The guy was unbelievably fast. I think he only got to play 64 games in the pros before he was injured, and that was enough for people to say this guy is a Hall of Famer. And I mean, if he didn't have an injury that cut his career short, again, you might be looking at him atop the all-time NFL rushing list. So Gale Sayers, I think, definitely has to get consideration in the top 10 of all time. Moving on to number 6. I'm sure most of us have seen this guy play plenty throughout his career. Just retired not too long ago. San Diego Chargers running back LaDainian Tomlinson. Another dual threat runner like Marshall Faulk. This guy even threw 8 touchdown passes in his career. But I think he retired like 3rd all time in touchdowns, 5th all time in rushing. You go look at his receiving stats for running back. He's probably in the top 3, if not top 5. It's a shame he never got to win a championship or get to a Super Bowl. I might even have to have him a little higher if he was able to do so. But Tomlinson, I mean, all those years he was winning scoring titles and leading the league in rushing. Phenomenal running back, definitely in the top 10. Going into the top 5 here, I'm going to start off with Heisman Trophy winner, Dallas Cowboy running back, Tony Dorsett out of the University of Pittsburgh. And Dorsett was actually a guy who did, when he retired, he was the NFL's all-time leading rusher in the 80s. He retired ahead of Walter Payton, who then passed him. But Tony Dorsett was a guy who was just smooth, explosive, quick. I don't think there was a back who was quicker than Tony Dorsett on his first step, getting up the field and exploding into runs. And when the Dallas Cowboys drafted him, or I think even traded up several picks to draft him, went on to win 2 Super Bowls with Tom Landry and that America's team. So Tony Dorsett, definitely a guy who's got to be up there. One of the top rushers still today of all time. Going to number 4. This guy is currently ranked as the all-time leading rusher in NFL history. Played a long time. Also played with some of the greatest teams to ever play football. So that's why I have him at number 4, because we all know running backs are only as good as their offensive line. And Emmitt Smith played with some of the best of them. But just the longevity throughout his career. The guy was a horse, carried the football time and time again, and really shredded every defense that he came across. So I got Emmitt Smith at number 4 all time. Hated playing against the guy, but you definitely have a lot of respect and admiration for what he was able to accomplish. So I have Emmitt at number 4. Number 3 would be Cleveland Browns running back Jimmy Brown back in the 60s. When he was the man. A lot of people consider him maybe the greatest football player of all time. My only knock on Jim Brown was that when you go back and you look at the films, it wasn't like he was playing against the greatest competition, some of the defenses that are out there today. He was really like the biggest, strongest, fastest guy on the field when he played. And now if you look at the NFL today, there's a lot of guys bigger and just as fast. So I think Jim Brown, still an all-time great, but I have him as the number 3 greatest running back. Not taking anything away from his accomplishments. The guy, played 12-game seasons, and in 9 years was the NFL's all-time leading rusher, and it took a long time before someone was able to knock him off that pedestal, take away that rushing crown. So going to my last 2 here. Unfortunately, I don't have an autograph of this guy. I would love to get one day. But number 2, I have Chicago Bears running back Walter Payton out of Jackson State. And Walter, going back and watching the highlights and stuff, one of my all-time favorites. What he was able to do when he was drafted by the Chicago Bears, who was very, very bad football team at the time. He really was the cornerstone, the foundation to help build that team into a Super Bowl champion. And this guy was just, he's a great, admirable person, and the way he played the game, he blocked, he ran, he caught the ball, and he did everything 100% on every play. So Walter Payton, number 2, was the NFL's all-time leading rusher until Emmitt Smith was able to take that crown away from him. And lastly, I'd have to say my favorite running back of all time, and I think it's hard to dispute this guy when you look at his numbers and knowing what he accomplished during his career, is Detroit Lions running back Barry Sanders. Also was the Heisman Trophy winner in 1988. You know, from the time Barry came into the league, he was the Detroit Lions. They really didn't have any other offensive weapons other than him. So game in and game out, every defense was gearing up to stop Barry. And for 10 years, the guy averaged 1,500 yards rushing. That was his average season, was 1,500 yards rushing. One of the other backs to rush for 2,000 yards. And he, I mean, this guy did more with less than I think any player, any running back at least, in NFL history. So that's why I have to have him at number one, because I don't think it mattered what year he played or what team he was on. He was going to be the greatest when he was on the field. So Barry Sanders would be my number one, and that completes my top 10 NFL running backs of all time. Again, guys that are retired and who are Hall of Famers or possibly future Hall of Famers. So hope you guys enjoyed that little bit, you know, kind of as it relates to cards here. I enjoy having autographs of all those guys. Again, it would be great to get a Walter Payton one day to round out my top 10, at least for now. So feel free to comment. Let me know what you guys think. Hope everyone's doing well. Talk to you all later.